Well, good evening, folks. I hope you're well. Wednesday, the 13th of March. This is London calling. I'm absolutely sick and tired of hearing the bloody Radio 4, about Brexit, 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 Brexit. It's like pulling the string on a doll, isn't it? Brexit, Brexit, Brexit. Every time you pull it, it's like Chatty Cathy. Well, anyway, the topic for this evening is going to be a relatively brief video, sad to say. Needs must. But I want to ask a question. I think it's a fair question. Even watching the Houses of Parliament today, live on TV, looking at the Houses of Parliament, and then looking around me and walking around town and, interacting with the humans. I've got to ask the question, where are all the men? Where are all the men nowadays? I feel desperately sorry for the women, quite frankly, and the children. I don't know about you, but the men I see nowadays, well, they fall into a few categories, none of which are men, or anything masculine. They range from being utter, fat, lazy slobs who really shouldn't be drawing breath, an absolute waste of DNA, to effeminate Nancy boys, quite frankly. And I feel desperately sorry for any female that's involved in their life to any degree. And here's the bad news, here's a news flash. Some of these men have children, don't they? And then, you see, I have another group of people to feel sorry for, and that's the offspring of such men. So we have the children to feel sorry for, and the wives, and quite frankly, most people associated with these pansies or slobs, utter slobs. One only has to look at the Houses of Parliament. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, that a politician should be presentable, smart, educated, well-spoken, for the people, by the people, representative. And during Prime Minister's, if you can call it that, question time, the camera pans around at these public school toffs, most of them, and it settles on some of the old farts, the low, double chins, big guts, the /paedophiles, many of them, Kenneth Clark being one of them, by the way, which I looked at today. He's a disgrace. And I'm not, forgetting the women, okay, this is a video about men. Women might be another video, I might tag it on the end of this one. But I want to concentrate on the men. These fat, slovenly slobs. You can look at, I remember a joke my mate said to me once when we were looking at the local talent, the women, and he pointed out this absolutely gorgeous girl, legs all the way to her shoulders, I won't labour the point, but she was hot. And he said, look at that, as hot as she is, you wouldn't believe that there's 3.5 kilograms of SH1T inside it, would you? Now, I had to think about that, SH1T, as you will, and think, oh my God, I know what he's talking about. You wouldn't, would you? It's hiding this monster that is due to be set and released upon the world that we live upon, the flat one. And I thought, well, it's a fair comment, but the packaging is pretty smart, isn't it? There's such a thing. But looking at these slobs now, I mean, think of the little ones, the children. And I then do have sympathy for those women who have to sleep with such a slob. You know, with their fat, spotty arse, beer belly overhang, love handles, sweaty double or treble chin, bad breath, bad habits, greasy hair, probably unkept, hair's coming out their ears, hair's coming out their nose, haven't quite shaved properly, and they expect and complain, actually, they expect their wives to make love with them, or even worse, perform oral sex upon them. Ugh. When it hasn't seen light nor day, the light of day, has it? The acorn. And I have to be honest, now this is going to be really brutal, it's an adult video if you like. There is no way on this God's green earth, if I was a woman, not really, that I would perform oral on any man. But mostly, if I had to, it certainly wouldn't be on a fat, overweight, stinking slob. That's graphic enough for you, I hope. And yet they demand it. They force it. They blackmail their partners for such a thing. You know. And I have to be honest with you, I would rather die. Because my mouth and what goes in it is sacred to me. It's the entrance to my only personal space inside my body. And I ain't sticking that in my mouth. Thanks very much. And it's bad enough having it stuck inside a woman, I suppose, if I was a woman. But to have to tolerate the expectation and demand, and forcibly demand it sometimes, of doing that to a fat slob. And because he needs, he wants, he demands as part of his conjugal rights, give us a favour, do us a, give me a break. It's grounds for divorce, I think. I understand. And yet, I equally feel sorry for the hookers, the girls on the street, who'd far rather have a client who's at least hygienic and presentable than the local fat slob of an MP or an obese husband who's coming out the pub stinking of curry and beer. What women are expected to put up with by men nowadays, it's a joke, because there are no men anymore. Not really. Where have they gone? The ones that stick up for women rather than beat them. The ones that read their children a bedtime story rather than, oh, is that the time I got to meet the boys down the pub? Have a few jars and increase my girth and come home in a drunken, semi-drunken stupor and either be violent, expect his wife or partner to cook a bloody meal late at night when all she wants to do after putting the kids to bed is put her feet up. And yet, to top it all, he wants sex. Well, I just feel so sorry for women stuck with such a slob. Equally, though, I do feel sorry for the children, suffer the little children. Even if they're young children or young teenagers who have a maths problem or a science problem at school and they have a homework problem and their father is a dunce. All he ever was and ever will be was a sperm donor. That's all. And so many fathers out there are a lame excuse and pass themselves off, and they call themselves a father when they do nothing but shirk that responsibility. Being a father means being chief cook and bottle washer, and they would think, I'm not going to change a nappy. It's not my job to feed the baby. I go out and earn a crust. If he does at all. It's a woman's job. And it's funny, the least attractive, fat, drunken, boozing slobs, often unemployed, the more they seem to think that they're above it all. But you do feel sorry for the children, don't you? Because unfortunately, they don't have a role model. The only role model they have is, quite frankly, an embarrassment to them. And the children often become brighter than the father. Well, when I was younger, that was never the case. My father was far brighter than me. I caught him up, I think, but he knew so much more than I ever did before he died. But can you say that about many fathers nowadays, whose children often are better educated than the fathers themselves? No. Instead of the father spending quality time with his children and teaching them skill sets like soldering electric wires, electronics, how to repair things, the mechanical things, the practicalities of being a man, all the fat slobs want to do is go out and have a piss up with the lads, a get together. Just occasionally you get fathers who are the Sunday footballers, who think once a week, I'm going to put my gear on, I'm going to pretend to be Bobby Charlton or whatever on the pitch. Sunday footballers, I just love them. It reminds me of that film Kess with the football scene and Casper's in goal in his shorts. Very much like me when I was a child. And they're bombing about, they're pretending mentally, they fantasize. And you walk past these people, these would-be fathers. They've got the football gear on, they've got the home or away shirt, they've got a sticker on the window of the car, they've got the scarf flying out the window down the motorway, and they're there. Are these our men of the United Kingdom? These are the fathers that the children should be oh so proud of. When he can't do algebra, he can't add up, he doesn't understand how to work out percentages and teach his children the importance of money management. Being a father isn't just being a sperm donor. The same can be said for a lot of women, in fairness. To be fair, this common statement the millennials say, to be fair. There's plenty of fantastic men. There's plenty of fantastic fathers. But they're getting fewer and fewer. And I'll tell you what is on the increase. Women are getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Broker and broker, more broke. Living in a state of penury. Not taking care of themselves. It's ever likely the old birds stop taking care of themselves. What are they taking care of themselves for when they're stuck with a fat slob who let himself go from the moment the ring went on the finger? She produced the brats, she improved the genetic bloodline by springing out a couple of more kids for him, and all he does is give them to her, and then once they reach critical mass, these two genius children get shoved in their bedroom to pay the pay station or the PSP, or do that with their iPhones all night while dad's down there watching the telly with a bottle of wine. I don't understand. I drink very rarely. Okay, I don't drink. I don't judge people who drink, but I tell you who I do judge. The people who can't wait to get home to have the obligatory glass of wine. It brightens up their bloody day. This is the highlight of their day. The prospect of getting home and cracking a bottle and having a couple of glasses of wine. Why? Is that it? Is that the sole reason for living? Is this how people motivate themselves now? They think about the reward at the end of the day like a good little pigeon to get home, and you can now spoil yourself by having a glass of wine. How ridiculous. I tell you what I used to look forward to, getting the kids to bed so I could read them an exciting bedtime story and watch their little faces. And these are the things now my children, 26 and 30 they are. Often we laugh about the stories that I used to say and tell them to get them to sleep. My kids positively look forward to going to sleep, or at least to bed, to get the bedtime stories, because we made it fun to go to bed. It was one-on-one time with the kids. My wife used to do it for a week and I did it for a week. It was my turn or this turn. And even today we laugh and joke about that. And my children will do exactly the same to their children. Hopefully my grandchildren, if I survive that long to see them. But it's a pity that society is crumbling. We can't always blame the big fat slobs of the men, but it's a man's world, and it's the man's job, whether we like it or not, to look after our women. They have great faith in us when they marry us, that we will be there, we will be supportive, we will make good husbands and great fathers. And yet so many marriages now, close on to not 1 in 3, it's close on to 50%, is ending in tragedy. And when you look, it's the lack of money. He doesn't care about us. All he wants to do is go out drinking with his mates and playing football or going to football matches, and he doesn't give a shit about the kids. Yada, yada, yada. And sometimes, not forgetting the women, sometimes it is the women to blame. Maybe she's had a fling with a more trim, athletic model who's a little bit more hygienic and a bit more savvy in the clothes department and isn't such an embarrassment or a pain to have sex with, because he's at least cleaned his teeth or uses deodorant, or knows how to please a woman. It's a strange old thing being a human in a relationship, isn't it? So many women, so little time used to be the statement on t-shirts. But women should wear t-shirts nowadays, they say. So many males, so few men. Because that's what I think, and I'm a bloke. I'm almost embarrassed now. I'm a minority. I am. I don't have a beer gut. Both my kids adore me. My wife still loves me, thank Christ, despite all my little peccadillos. We're a success story, we are. And that's a tragedy. But we've worked towards it. We've had our ups and downs, and we've got through them because we love one another. And I've always respected my wife and loved her, and I think it's reciprocal. But I've never knowingly done any harm to my wife, or bought or embarrassed her in public. But so many men bring their wives or girlfriends down in public and take great schadenfreudic pleasure from it, keeping the little woman in control. And I've never raised my hand to my wife, ever, 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 and nor she me. It's all about respect, innit? But what about the self-respect? How can these fat bastards of politicians and executives and people out there, I see them on the train every day. I see them in the traffic and I see them walking around the supermarkets. I get out and about and I see these pathetic excuses from men, and I thank the lucky stars that A, I wasn't a woman, and B, I wasn't stuck with them slobs and excuse of men who've got the manners of a pig and they smell like one. I'm not even going to discuss the women. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And sometimes men will stray. But then you have to look at, well, apart from saying, what a bastard, you have to look. Men and women don't do that without justification, most of the time. Men have to learn how to keep their wives happy and themselves in trim. Women should learn how to keep their husbands happy and themselves in trim. But the moment the ring goes on the finger, they think it's a license to settle down and chill out and pile it on and treat each other with such contempt. It's ever likely. And the children adopt these ways. I see children who are positively repellent, and then I see their parents, and then I understand why the children are positively repellent, because they're just like mummy and daddy. Strange that the lad is like his father and she's like the mother. And it is very, very true, in my opinion, that if I want to know what my wife's going to look like at the time I married her, I want to know what she's going to look like in 30 years. Look at her mother. And my mother-in-law is still quite a hot babe, even at her age. She still turns heads. And ain't that a testament? How many sons can say that of their fathers? It's a man thing to let oneself go. Just check out the politicians. Check out all the fat slobs in Brussels, in the EU headquarters. They all use hookers, folks, because they have to, not because they want to. Because any other way of them getting a dolly bird or an attractive wife is out of the window. It's not even on the menu. They have to pay. Well, you get out of life exactly what you put in. It's at least fair most of the time, but it's very unfair what a man will do to his wife over a period of time and expect her to feel the same way about him if he treats her like crap. And the same can be said for women. But it's the man's job to lead by example and keep himself presentable and smart, at least for the dignity of his wife, who's got to face her friends, whose husbands may be just that little bit special compared to the one fat slob she's ended up being stuck with, who treats her like such contempt, with such contempt. I see them every day and I thank my lucky stars that I am not them. I couldn't be. It's not in my nature. And I feel desperately sorry for the children. Catch you tomorrow, folks, when I simply have more time. Have a think about what I said. Do you know any fat slobs that you would die rather than live with? answers on the postcard below. Please do subscribe and thumbs up if you like the vid. Make a comment if you like.